The Man Who Survived Two Atomic Bombs narration style, storytelling. Can you believe that one man survived not one, but two atomic bomb explosions? It sounds impossible, like something straight out of a Hollywood movie. But this is a true story. The man's name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi, and what happened to him in August 1945 remains one of the most unbelievable survival stories in human history. Picture this. The Second World War was nearing its end. Japan was exhausted after years of conflict. Cities had been bombed, resources were running low, and people were living with uncertainty every single day. At the time, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was a young engineer working for a Japanese company. In early August 1945, he was in the city of Hiroshima on a business trip. After completing his work, he was preparing to return home to his wife and young son in Nagasaki. For him, it seemed like an ordinary morning. He had no idea that history was about to change forever. On the morning of August 6, 1945, Yamaguchi was walking through Hiroshima. The sky was clear. The city was waking up. People were heading to work. Children were preparing for school. Everything seemed normal. Then, suddenly, he heard the sound of an aircraft overhead. Looking up, he noticed an American bomber flying high above the city. Moments later, a blinding flash of light exploded across the sky. Yamaguchi later described it as being brighter than the sun itself. Before he could react, an enormous shockwave slammed into him. The force threw him through the air. The temperature around him rose instantly. Buildings collapsed. Windows shattered. People disappeared in an instant. The atomic bomb known as Little Boy had just detonated over Hiroshima. Within seconds, the city became a nightmare. Fires erupted everywhere. Smoke covered the sky. Thousands of people were killed immediately. Others wandered through the streets, badly burned, and desperately searching for loved ones. Yamaguchi had suffered severe burns and injuries. His eardrums were damaged. His body was in terrible pain. But somehow, against all odds, he was still alive. As the hours passed, he struggled to make sense of what had happened. The city he had known only hours earlier was gone. Entire neighborhoods had vanished. People were crying, screaming, searching. Everywhere he looked, there was destruction. Most people would have given up hope, but Yamaguchi was determined to get home. The following day, despite his injuries, he managed to find transportation out of Hiroshima. The journey was difficult. Every movement caused pain, but all he could think about was seeing his family again. Eventually, he arrived back in Nagasaki. His wife was shocked by his condition. His face and body were covered with burns. Yet despite everything he had been through, he was grateful to be alive. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the worst was over. But fate had one more surprise waiting for him. 3 days later, August 9, 1945. Yamaguchi returned to work. His colleagues listened as he tried to describe the horror he had witnessed in Hiroshima. He told them about the flash, the explosion, the destruction of an entire city. Many found it difficult to believe. How could a single bomb destroy so much? How could one city vanish in a matter of seconds? Then, it happened again. A bright flash suddenly lit up the room. For a split second, everything turned white. And then came the explosion. Another atomic bomb. This time, the target was Nagasaki. The bomb, later known as Fat Man, unleashed unimaginable destruction. Buildings crumbled. Fires spread across the city. Thousands more lives were lost. Yamaguchi had now experienced 2 atomic bomb attacks within just 3 days. It sounds unbelievable, yet it really happened. Once again, he was injured. Once again, he found himself surrounded by devastation. And once again, he survived. Think about that for a moment. Out of millions of people living in Japan at the time, one man happened to be present during both atomic bombings. And somehow, he lived through both. When the war finally ended, Yamaguchi devoted much of his life to speaking about what he had witnessed. He shared his experiences with future generations, not because he wanted attention, but because he wanted the world to understand the true cost of war. He wanted people to remember the suffering, the loss, the destruction, and the importance of peace. For decades, he carried the memories of those terrible days, memories that never truly left him. In 2010, Tsutomu Yamaguchi passed away at the age of 93. But his story continues to inspire people around the world. A story of survival, a story of resilience, a story so extraordinary that it almost seems impossible. Yet every word of it is true.